White South Africans that were pretty much the only people Donald Trump has let into the country since his administration took over are returning home. They came to the United States because they said they were being persecuted in their home country, and now they're going back because they say nobody is meant to live the way you have to live in the United States. It's too expensive and it's too violent. They say, look, we're leaving the U.S. to return home because I don't want to live in a place like this. That article goes on to claim that they didn't want to live in places where people are getting shot in broad daylight and where things cost 10 times more than they should. See, for the people in the U.S., these things are normal, but for the rest of the world, it's not. We are not a safe country. We are not the greatest country in the world, and we're not a country that actually takes care of its citizens. So these white South Africans that came here because they were persecuted, that Donald Trump welcomed to fanfare, are now going home because things were better there than they are in the United States.
I personally don't believe South Africa should take back any of the white Afrikaners that left South Africa due to the genocide of the white farmers that just simply didn't exist.
A growing number of South Africans returning home from abroad. This comes as some citizens consider leaving under a refugee program that was introduced by the United States' administration of Donald Trump following unfounded claims of a so-called white genocide in the country.
We talked briefly about white South Africans who arrived to America as refugees. They had horrible living conditions, complaining about only getting $2,000 a month, and that wasn't enough to live, and that America is really violent. More than 12,000 South Africans have checked their citizenship status on a portal that was launched. That represents a fraction of the total South Africans abroad. But official statistics have shown that over 15,000 South Africans have repatriated to South Africa in the last 2 years. Over 1,000 have reclaimed their citizenship, and the rest in America are complaining about the cost of living, saying that the money they're receiving from the government is not adequate, that it's too expensive, they can't keep it with their bills, and they're not receiving preferential treatment that they thought they would receive under Donald Trump.
Refugees is that they're spending weeks in motels in unsafe areas. They're being offered housing that is full of mold, apartments that are full of mold in expensive areas. So each refugee is allotted $2,000, and all of that has been going to rent. So they're really left with nothing. And these agencies are supposed to help them apply to jobs, obtain temporary benefits such as SNAP and Medicaid. They don't have transportation. They don't have the right clothing.
So this is why they say racism is expensive. You left your country where your great-great-great-grandparents settled, and due to your fear of being a minority in a country that you shouldn't be in, you came to America thinking you were going to get preferential treatment and that America was a white country. You found out America's not a white country. You also found out that you came here and they treated you like a refugee and they made you a poor white person, meaning you were forgotten about and you got no benefits besides the free $2,000 that you get that I don't receive. And now you're going back to South Africa because you realize that your life there is better than your life here. I don't think you guys should be taking these people back, South Africa. That's just my opinion. Hey, I'm not South African. What do I know? All I know is that racism is expensive, and when you come to a country as a racist and you go back to a country as a racist, you're still a racist.
To the 50 Afrikaners who fled to the US, calling themselves refugees, you are not refugees. You are just a case study of white flight dressed up as martyrdom. You're not escaping violence, you're escaping equality. South Africa didn't chase you away. You ran. Yes, South Africa is one of the most violent countries in the world. Yes, brutality exists. But let's be honest, violence affects all communities, not just white farmers. Black, colored, Indian, and yes, white people are all targets of a national crime crisis. What we have is a breakdown in safety, not a white genocide. This is not ethnic cleansing, it's criminal collapse, and running to the US won't fix it. You are part of a 7% minority, but somehow still manages to control over 70% of the wealth. That is not persecution, that's privilege on a guilt trip. And let's be real, if we tried to relocate just half of the Afrikaans population, it would take decades, billions in logistics, and you'd still end up culturally homeless in a country that don't want your apartheid baggage. You're not brave, you're not victims. You're scared of a world where you don't get to be in charge, and that makes the rest of the Afrikaans community cringe, because you make us look weak. South Africa is broken, and it's our problem to solve. So if you don't have the spine to do so, stay gone.
So apparently, some white South Africans who relocated to the United States as refugees are already reconsidering that decision, and some cases packing their bags to return home. And the reason they are giving, that's where things get really interesting. You actually cannot make this up. People who left South Africa claiming it was unsafe moved to United States as refugees, and now less than a few months, some of them are already saying, yeah, we want to go back. Like, seriously? Now wait, because this gets even more interesting. These were the same stories that were being pushed, that white South Africans were being heavily persecuted, that they needed protection, that they needed a way out. But now we are hearing a completely different tune. Complaints about cost of living, rent being too high, life not being what they expected, and even concerns about safety in US. So the bigger question here is, what changed? Before we go any further, this video is for commentary and discussion purposes only. The views shared are based on publicly available information, opinion, and online clips. We engage respectful conversation, and this content is not meant to spread hate or misinformation towards any group or country. And also, every clip you're about to see, full credit goes to the original creators. So let's get into it.
Thousands of white South Africans abroad, including those in the United States, are returning home. Reuters news agency reports that at least 12,000 foreign-based white South Africans have checked the status of their citizenship in preparation of making a permanent return to the African nation. This is in response to the South African government's November 2025 decision to overturn a law introduced in 1995, stripping some South Africans of their citizenship after leaving the country. While US President Donald Trump alleged in early 2025 that white South Africans were being unfairly targeted through what he described as discriminative laws relating to land ownership and labor service, many of them hold a contrary opinion and have decided to return home. For instance, in 2022 alone, though Trump was not in office at the time, official records show that 15,000 white South Africans returned to the country that year. After Pretoria overturned the 1995 law on citizenship laws, at least 1,000 people reclaimed their South African nationality and formally asked to return home. While President Trump offered a refugee deal for white South Africans seeking relocation to the U.S., records show that 3,500 have taken up the offer, a figure negated by the thousands of South Africans heading the opposite direction. A South African relocation and employment agency told Reuters that in the last 6 months it had received a 70% surge in inquiries from white South Africans seeking to return home. Another agency reported a 30% increase since 2024, indicating the increased interest in settling in South Africa. Some of the interviewed returnees said their reasons for returning to South Africa included the need to be close to family, lower cost of living, escalating political tensions abroad, especially in the United States, ability to work remotely, improved availability of electricity in South Africa, and the sentimental attachment to one's country of birth. Many of those who left South Africa in the previous years are Afrikaners, the descendants of Dutch nationals who settled in the country many years ago. Trump said that this group of South Africans was particularly being targeted by unfair laws, an allegation that South Africa, through President Cyril Ramaphosa, strongly denied. Records show that whites constitute about 7% of South Africa's 63 million people, but they occupy approximately 70% of the country's farmland. While the unemployment rate among black South Africans stands at 35%, it is 8% among the whites there. The national average is slightly over 31%.
Do you guys remember in May of last year when Donald Trump announced that he was going to be bringing in white South Africans as refugees? Because he loudly claimed in front of South Africa's president and his white cabinet members that white people in South Africa were being genocided. In case you don't remember, here is a short clip of somebody in Trump's administration welcoming the South Africans, the white South Africans, and saying that they have good seeds which will grow in the United States.
Over the years, and I am sure that you will be successful. It's, as you know, a lot of you, I think, are farmers, right? When you have quality seeds, you can put them in foreign soil and they will blossom, they will bloom. And we are excited to welcome you here to our country where we think you will bloom, and we will hopefully allow you to have fulfilling lives for your children, and then we will bloom and we will benefit alongside you. So thank you very much for coming.
It's really unnerving to hear MAGA men talk about the seeds of growth or whatever he was babbling about. But yeah, anyway, white South Africans were like the only group that Donald Trump wanted to allow to legally come to the United States. And apparently they're all leaving. Thousands of white South Africans repatriate as U.S. safety fears grow. Thousands of white South Africans are returning home after years abroad, reversing a long-standing trend of immigration. Many are reclaiming citizenship through a government portal launched after the repeal of a 1995 law that had stripped citizenship from some expatriates. Part of the migration story is shaped by the United States. The Trump administration launched a program offering refuge to white South Africans, particularly Afrikaners, citing concerns over crime and alleged persecution, claims that South African authorities deny. While some took advantage of the U.S. program, growing worries about mass shootings, immigration enforcement, and political instability in the U.S. have prompted many to reconsider and return home. Improvements in infrastructure like the near end of daily power outages and enhanced private security have boosted confidence among those moving back. Analysts say the trend reflects both practical and economic considerations. Remote work has made it easier for professionals to live in South Africa while keeping jobs abroad. Many see South Africa as offering a safer, more affordable, and more stable environment than some countries they have lived in, including the United States. So obviously Donald Trump is not to blame for mass shootings or the healthcare issues of the United States. He's not solely to blame. But the U.S. has some serious systemic issues, and anybody coming here as a refugee from a relatively safe country like South Africa will quickly realize, like, oh, I've made a terrible mistake. Reuters did a whole article on this too, and here's a clip from Reuters talking about people that have lived in the U.S. for decades and who decided, yeah, screw this, I'm moving back to South Africa.
Naomi Sapphire was born in South Africa and lived for 2 decades in the United States. She came back home for a holiday and realized how much she missed this place.
You cannot dictate what makes your heart happy. So you leave and then you come back because ultimately this is home.
Last year, Sapphire left North Carolina for a seaside town in South Africa's Western Cape. Now, she says her 3 children spend more time outdoors, health insurance is affordable, and she prefers the schools. She's among thousands of white South Africans coming back from abroad, despite U.S. President Donald Trump's statements that South Africa's white minority is being persecuted by the country's black majority government.
Terrible things are happening in South Africa.
The Trump administration is ramping up its new refugee program for white South Africans, focusing on Afrikaners, the descendants of Dutch settlers, such as Sapphire and her family. About 3,500 South Africans have entered the United States as refugees since the program started in May 2025. Pretoria says there is no evidence of discrimination or persecution against whites. Many white South Africans and Afrikaners have welcomed Trump's support, but insisted they nevertheless wanted to remain in their country. And others who left decades ago are now returning. Anton van Heerden is an employment agent who has been trying to help returnees keep their jobs abroad by shifting to remote work. He said inquiries from white South Africans seeking to return had jumped 70% in the past 6 months.
We have also asked these people why they're coming back, and we got a lot of different reasons. The obvious ones would be whether family, friends, the vibe in South Africa, but also things like costs of living and living standards are considered to be very high in South Africa.
For Naomi and her husband, Danny, they're happy with their choice.
Some of the metrics that we use to decide like whether or not this is our permanent place is education, cost of living, how much we're enjoying the place. And so far, that's ticking all the boxes.
Yeah, the only immigrants that Trump wants are white people from countries that have universal health care and better schools, and they're relatively safer than the United States. But none of those people want to be here for obvious reasons. It's just another hilarious saga in Trump's failures. Like, he genuinely thought that South Africans were going to be like clamoring over each other to get to the United States. Hilarious and stupid.
So allegedly, the South African refugees said that America is too ghetto. They're going back home. Trump spent all them taxpayer dollars to bring them folks over here because he wanted to bring the European numbers up, because we found out not too long ago that their population is declining because they was the main ones going to the AB clinic getting rid of them babies that they uncles and daddies was putting in them, right? So they brought over these European people from South Africa. These European people said, we don't like it here. we want to go home. We was better off where we was at. Now, they tried to convince us that them people was over there being bullied, being told what to do. Them people couldn't live life right. They was being mistreated and all that. Just for them to come over here and not like the way they're treated. That is crazy. But the worst part about it all is that they spent taxpayer dollars to get these people over here, and now they going back home. I hope they going back home on their dime. I hope they going back home on. I hope y'all going. Can somebody figure that? Is they going back home on their dime or our dime? Because I didn't invite them here in the first place. I never said I wanted them here. Okay, so I bet not be paying for them to go back home. We didn't already pay for them to get here, and they don't like it. Shit.
Guys, over a year ago, Ramaphosa made this bet about the 49 Afrikaners who left South Africa to head to the U.S. Look.
When you run away, you're a coward. And that's a real cowardly act. And I expect every South African to stay here and we work together and we solve our problems. We've got the most beautiful country in the world. And I can bet you they will be back soon because there's no country like South Africa. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, it looks like Ramaphosa's bet might come true. You can see that thousands of white South Africans are planning to return home, despite Trump's statements that white minority is being persecuted by the country's black majority government. The article's headline says some are returning to a better life, and you can see that they cite better quality of life and lower cost of living in South Africa. And even the agencies, they report surge in inquiries from expats wanting to return. New portal allows South Africans to restore citizenship. What do you guys think about this? Because Ramaphosa made that bet and he said that they'll come home soon. And only in a year time, they all want to return. Let me know what you guys think about this. Comment below.
The jokes write themselves, literally. So the U.S. ambassador to South Africa is busy giving us a list of demands. It now went from 4 to 6 demands, right? So I'm not even going to list them because they're not worthy of our attention. But while he's doing all of this, thousands of white South Africans are reported to be planning on returning home, despite what they've been saying about the white genocide. Now, these people are saying that, number one, the dangers of living in America, cities like California, you see people getting shot. Cities like Minnesota, people are getting shot by agents. You're seeing everywhere in the country mass shootings. Okay, I'm just telling you what I read in the article, right? And then people are also saying that the cost of living in America is just unreasonable compared to South Africa, of course. So they'd rather move from that number one democracy in the world and come back to where they are being persecuted. I don't think this guy is fit to be the US ambassador to South Africa. We do not accept him. Same way America sent back our ambassador after he said some things is the same way Ramaphosa should send this guy right back to where he comes from.
Now, after watching all of that, it really leaves you thinking, because at the end of the day, moving to a completely different country is not just about what you hear. It's about what you actually experience when you get there. And sometimes Those two things don't match at all. What might look like a better life from the outside can feel completely different when you're living in it every single day. The cost of living, the lifestyle, the culture, the expectation, everything hits differently when it becomes real. And in this case, it seems like a lot of expectation didn't line up with reality. But at the same time, this also opens up a bigger conversation about how narratives are formed, how stories were pushed online, and how people make life-changing decisions based on what they believe to be true. Because let's be honest, leaving your country as a refugee is not a small decision. That's something people do when they truly believe there is no better option. So now, seeing some of those same people wanting to go back, it raises question. Were they misinformed? Did they underestimate what life in the US would actually be like? Or is it just a case of grass isn't always greener on the other side? And that's something a lot of people can relate to, not even just on a country level, but in a real life general. Sometimes what we think will solve everything ends up bringing a completely different set of challenges. But I really want to hear from you on this. What do you think about this whole situation? Do you think this is being blown out of proportion? Or do you think it says something deeper about expectation versus reality? If you are in that position, would you stay and try to adjust, or will you go back home? Let's have a real conversation in the comments. If you made it this far, don't forget to like this video. It really helps more people to see content like this. Share this with someone who would find this topic interesting. And if you enjoy real conversation like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on your notification so you never miss another one. See you in my next episode.